So we are now going to move on to our first panel for the day, a very interesting topic, transforming education in Africa, with some fundamental thought leaders in this space. So I will welcome the panelists for this conversation. First of all, Dr. Mary Haruna, the Dean, Faculty of Arts and Humanities at Bellevue College, USA. We'll give her a round of applause. Joining her on stage will be Dr. Gift, the publisher of the New Africa magazine, who gave her keynote address. Can we welcome Dr. Gift? Thank you. Joining them also will be the president of the Princeton Leadership Forum, Dr. Chibuke Echem. I'm not sure if they're in the room. You're welcome, sir. We will then welcome Grace Gunner, who is a clinical pharmacist, giving us a nice healthcare perspective. We'll be joined again by our keynote speaker, PK, I think who needs no further introduction. And last but finally, by no means least, Dr. Samuel Ojong, who is the president of Crown Point International, the College of Health Sciences and Technology, Nigeria. And moderating this fantastic conversation will be Nathan Isaac, who is Africa's foremost growth strategist. Please welcome Nathan.
Good morning, everybody. I hope we're all having a nice time today. Good morning, my panelists. I salute all of you. We're all looking shiny. Looks like we're ready for the party after the party. Okay. Today, we're going to be discussing very briefly about transforming education in Africa. And it's going to be short as possible, because I know some people have some other party dresses to put on. Yeah, I'm going to give one question to each panelist, so we're not all going to answer the same question. So I'll start from my right here. Okay, so when I get to you, I'll give you your question, and then we go straight to it, 1 minute, and then we're out of here. Because a lot of foundation has been laid already about education in Africa. You know, we did a lot about that, even whilst we were talking about rebranding. We talked about the difference between education and schooling. PK talked about the fundamental education system in Africa, which has to do with observation and apprenticeship. For those of you who were here, you can remember. So we're just going to dive into what we have to do today. I'm going to read a very short statistics from the UIS to give us a picture of the problem that we have at hand, and then we can bear solutions to transformation of education in Africa. Of all regions in sub-Saharan Africa, the highest rates of education exclusion is actually in sub-Saharan Africa. Over 1/5 of children between the ages of about 6 and 11 are out of school, followed by 1/3 youths between the ages of 12 and 14. According to the UIS data, almost 60% of youths between the ages of about 15 and 17 are not in school. So I'm going to go to the first question that we have here, looking at the challenges that we have in education, and one of them is affordability. So my first question to you, sir, is what can be done about affordability of education in Africa? What can we do about making education more affordable? Thank you.
All right, thank you. And good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You see, we've said a lot about education in Africa and the impact. And right now we're discussing the how can we make education affordable. Essentially, I think these are issues that policy can actually address. Government policies can actually address. You know, if you go to a lot of, for instance, in Nigeria, in most states in Nigeria, most state governments have actually made education very affordable, especially at the, you know, at the primary level to some even at the higher institution. They make it almost free, you know, for people to be able to gain access to quality education. But I think at the larger scale, the federal or the central government needs to also take hold of that to make education a priority. And how do you know this? You begin to look at what kind of budgeting do we create when we make budget for, you know, our national life. So sometimes you find out that education is not, you know, as important, you know, compared to other budgeting areas that we. So for our education to be, you know, reaching to the point where every child is guaranteed of getting education, it has to be a policy affair, and it has to be a priority of government to be able to drive that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chibuike. So we have to find ways to influence for policies that will make for more affordable education. Dr. Anne, I'd like you to speak to us or help us answer this question, because one of the problems we have, the obstacles to education we have in Africa, seem to be early marriage. Yeah, so we have the problem of early marriage. So what can we do to make sure that we get this obstacle out of the way so that we can transform education in Africa?
Thank you for the question. Early marriage, as we all know it, has been happening for quite some time. My mom got married when she was 17.
Oh.
However, if you want somebody to be married early, you have to, as a parent, there has to be some sort of consent if you want your child to be married early. There are some parts of Africa whereby they marry kids off at age 13, which is absurd. And you cannot subject a child to that kind of situation. So we just have to continue to fight. There are already foundations and organizations in place that are actually fighting the early marriage of children, because those particular parts of the nation or Africa do not believe in the education of a child, a girl child, to be specific. And when you have a society whereby women are fighting, which is one of the things that Dr. Louisa is going to talk about, and we have more voices, and we have policies in place, and we take out those cabals who do not believe that a girl child should be educated, I think we'll be able to find that kind of solution. And it all goes back to letting both men and women, because sometimes the women, they play into it because they think they do not have a choice. So they have to actually marry their kids out to rich guys in order for them to survive. That's selling your child, that's selling your daughter because you want to survive. So we need to give back the choices. We cannot take voices away from anyone. When you take a child from a mom, you're actually taking the voice of that mother, or you're taking a child of that family, because they do not have the wherewithal or the resources to be able to fight those bureaucracy that leads to early child marriage. So those policies need to be in place, and some punishments need to be in place when you force a child into any kind of marriage that they do not, at 13, they don't know their left from their right. So a parent is making a choice for that child because the child doesn't really know what they're talking about. Yeah. So those parents need to be taken to task when they try to force their kids into marriage. And the guys, or the older guys, who is old enough to be their grandparents, wanting to marry a small girl, also need to be taken to task for that to be stopped.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to say one more thing to what you said, because you said something about getting their consent. So is there an age limit that should require consent, or?
Yeah, I live in the US, and at age 18, the child can consent to be married, because at 18 you are considered a young adult.
Okay.
I have my kids, I have a 25-year-old and I have a 21-year-old, but because of the way I was raised in an environment whereby you stay with your parents until you are married. And the belief from my parents is that you have to finish school, you have to have education, you have to be independent. Even though you are supporting your spouse or your partner, you have to grow to that maturity. At 22, I don't even know if I'm matured enough. I didn't even know what I'm going to be in life. So at 18 is considered an adult age in the US. So below 18, there shouldn't even be a discussion.
Okay.
It shouldn't be a discussion of a child getting married or going to marry. Rather than at that time, that is when you're actually encouraging the child to even go to school to make something of themselves. PK has been saying it since yesterday. He's been mentioning it, but everything still goes back to the pedagogy of the mind, the education of the mind and body. Yeah. And in doing that, you're actually instilling in those children their voice. You need to give them voice to be able to say, no, I'm not going to do this. But when you take away that voice, they are vulnerable. You are taking away their choices. When you take someone's choice away from them, that's decapitating them. You are incapacitating them to a particular point whereby whatever you tell them, they don't have a choice but to say yes to it. So that age level, there should be that age level. It's criminal in the US for a 16-year-old to say they want to get married. It's a criminal offense. So we have to establish. There has to be an established policy.
All right.
that cancels or despises any child that is not of that legal age for them to be married.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please put your hands together for Dr. Ann. The next question goes to Dr. Gift. And another obstacle we have to deal with here is the obstacle of child labor. What can we do, to remove the obstacle of child labor, because it is an impediment to education in Africa?
Okay, thank you for that question. I think the idea of child labor is a mind thing. Poverty in Africa has actually reduced a lot of people into thinking that children are meant to be a part of the breadwinning team. Okay. And that is a problem. I think parents of families should regain their structure where the father is the provider and the mother is the supporter, and then letting children out of it. But I think poverty, when there are two things in life: the reality where in school the teachers do this and do this, and then the second part is the reality we are seeing. Because when a family don't have even a means of taking care of their feeding, at least 2 square meals in a day, they are subjected to some things naturally they wouldn't have thought of doing. Imagine a family where they can't feed their children and the only source of their daily meal is to send their children out to go, sell maybe water, pure water or whatever. So it comes back to, because like we've been saying for the past one day or since yesterday, the mindset, having a renewed mindset. If I'm rebranding, I want to change the mindset. I think the older ones might have made some mistake already, but from the younger generation, it's time to start teaching the younger generation on how to change the narrative. And to do that, we need to bring back the real spice of our African education, which is entrepreneurship, stroke, mentorship. We call it apprenticeship programs. Okay. This is what works for Africa. The regular school of classroom, you teach children what they taught our grandparents, is just a repeated food. How many of our graduates are even employable? I say this often. Most of our children in Africa go to school, and after school, they can't even defend what they've been taught in school. Yeah. I know of schools that they teach children or students in computer science, and for 200 level, at 200 level, they've not even seen a real computer. In Africa, it happens. Then you want them to compete with the global world where children at 10 years already operate gadgets. I think we should go back to the real educational system that works for us, and that is apprenticeship program, where people learn skills, and learn how to manage those skills. I think in Africa, one of our biggest challenge we have here is we copy what the Western world gives us. Even if it doesn't suit us, we copy that, and that is what we keep pushing to make it, to localize it. But if we can come up with a solution that will bridge let me use the word, the Western education, which is the classroom education, and find a way to merge it into our own kind of education that works for us, which is the apprentice system of education. So that when people learn skills, because now in Africa, we open the social media everywhere, you say, come and learn skill, but the question is, how many of this skill training have actually empowered our people? So we still have a problem. So we do an apprenticeship because we say that's our African education. A lot of them got the skill, but they can't go beyond their environment. Then we have those that have gone to school without skills, and they're not even employable in the first place. So how do we bridge these two categories of people? And that is where we need to start understanding.
Sorry, is there a way, I don't want us to mix it up, learning skills, sometimes I think it might be confused with child labor. Mm-hmm. So I'd like for you to establish a balance there, all right? So some people are actually undergoing child labor all in the name of, learning skills. Okay, I also want you to help us throw more light on the fact that probably what is happening here is what has been happening from the Stone Ages, where people have a lot of children because they need people to farm for them. So maybe people are still having a lot of children even when they do not have a farm, and they send them out to the streets to hawk. So I want you to just help us, straighten that up, and then, yeah. Okay,
the difference between child labor and learning skill is when you put a child into becoming a breadwinner, okay, that is child labor.
Perfect, good.
But when you are grooming a child to become a potential, or grooming a child to become something that will, increase his or her knowledge and become useful to the society, that is apprenticeship and entrepreneur. So I think I answered that question.
Yes, very well. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. The next question is on the quality of education. There's a high level of inequality in the quality of education that we have across Africa. So what do you think we can do to make this better, or to improve this?
Thank you. I think that one of the things that has been repeatedly said by everybody that has laid the foundation for this is the fact that we have to influence the society, the mind of society at the societal level first. If the message is continually passed across at every level, local level, government level, village level, the fact that education, not purely didactic classroom education, but education as it relates to just raising a generation, grooming people, building skills, as she said, is something that's essential for every child's future. That will help inculcate into the system, because that's a systematic problem. Okay. It's not a quick fix type of thing. That's a systemic problem that's got to be dealt with from the ground up, and from the from up to down, from down to up. So I think one of the first things that needs to be done is just the mass communication of the fact that this is something that every child is entitled to. And when we say entitlement, not in the sense of, oh, I have a right, but if a child is born, the expectation, just as we expect to feed a child, nurture a child into adulthood, it's expected that we're equipping those children, right? To be able to live, to be able to survive, to be able to thrive. And so equality is not even, it's a basic necessity. And that is key to the communication, is that every child this is part of a child's upbringing. This is a part of a child's nurturing. So it's got to be a systemic thing. In the village, everybody's got to go to whatever is available, be it an apprenticeship, be it, you know, classroom, whatever is available at any level. We've got to start, you know, with whatever resources, you know, whatever resources are available to that community, let them start there. But the question of keeping a child at home doing nothing, or just, you know, just raising them to get married, that should not be an option, because even in that marital home, at some point, if, you know, God forbid, if the husband is incapacitated at some point or the other, you know, the lady will have to step in. So the concept of empowerment, that you're raising this child to thrive, to be at some point independent if they need to be, to have some skill, something in their pocket with which they can go barter in society. I think that's the communication that has to be passed across at every level.
I think I like that. So improving the quality of education in Africa, we should look at what people learn from their homes, what they learn in the society, and how they are prepared to, you know, thrive by learning. Okay, I think that's amazing.
And I do want to say quickly that obviously that's just the start. There's so much else that can be done, but I'm just saying
basically,
yes, very basic, and then we
you.
build upon that.
Thank you, thank you. I don't think it's, please put your hands together, feel free to clap, yes. I don't think it's a coincidence that this question is falling on PK again. So maybe he will have to, you know, resound some of the things he said yesterday. Now, we're talking about learning methods. When we're talking about transforming education in Africa, we have to look at the learning methods. So, what learning methods should we begin to adopt going forward?
Yes, so the most illiterate person I've ever met in my life had a PhD, right? Because I found out that, you know, the wealthiest, one of the most successful people I've ever met is actually the most foolish person I've ever met as well. Some people are so poor, all they have is money. And some people are so academically qualified, they have zero education. And
too many oxymorons.
and the courage to consider that life in the human condition is not necessarily Western or American. Because a lot of times when we attempt to represent the reality of the human condition, we descend from the highest resolution of that condition to that which is either Western or American. And so when you want to check whether someone is educated, what we are trying to say is whether he's Westernized or is highly Americanized. So we say that somebody eating it with his hands in the West, where I come from, there's a delicacy called amala. Amala comes with gbegiri and ewedu. And you don't eat it with cutleries and silverware. You wash your hands, take care of your nails,
and you dive in,
and you eat it. That is when you get the full juice of it. Now, to somebody else, that's primitive, because we are looking at that person from the Western perspective. Then the American president has to eat burger on national TV, and he's using his hands, because the Americans don't eat burger, because I live in the United States. We don't eat burgers with cutleries and knives. We hold it in our hands and eat. Then he's not primitive, even though he's eating with his hands, right? A teacher called me one time and said, my son, when he's teaching, doesn't look at him. He's sort of looking outside, doesn't look at him. So they all called me to the school, and I went to the school to say, excuse me, please, who are you? Why should he be looking at you? What is is he failing in class? No. Is he not passing his exams? No. Is he disturbing the class and stressing everybody? No. So I don't get it. What is the loss of him not looking at you? What are you trying to prevent? If he doesn't look at you, what is he missing, and what problem is he creating, right? And I told him, please don't call me for this kind of things again. I don't even care if he's last in class. That's not why I sent him to this expensive school. I sent him here not to come and be first person, because we all now know that first in class is not first in life.
True.
So I didn't send him here to be first in class, right? If you have any academic problems, call his mom. Don't call me. If you want to call me if he's rude, if he's disrespectful, if his social skills are defective, if he's not demonstrating resilience, then give me a call. Because at the end of the day, that is the critical success, relevant, greatness, and legacy factor. His capacity to interpret his relationship with people, the resilience that supports that, right? So a friend of mine called me and said I should come and give a final counsel. I mentored the family to his son who was going to Harvard to school. And they thought I was going to sit him down and teach him about, how to study and how to prepare. I told him, look, I don't care what you do when you get to school. But by the time you are graduating, and in every level you find yourself, make sure you do only one thing. The phone number and email of everybody in your school should be on your phone. That's your greatest success. If you finish that school with the best degree and you miss that, you are a fool. Your wisdom is the capacity to rent a space in the heads of everybody in that school and let them know you are around. And at the end of the day, when you dimension that to who we are as Africans, that is what we do all day. And the tragedy of the African condition is that our education was taken and replaced with the classroom. The white man came, took our education, and gave us the classroom. And we've been struggling to stay in the classroom all our lives, working so hard to not only accept what is Western, but also to judge ourselves by it, and to ensure that progress will be determined by how Western we talk, how Western we dress, and how Western we carry ourselves. So I've reduced education to 4 things. I don't care if you have a PhD or you have a master's or 200. And by the way, I spent 12 years in the university studying a 4-year course, right? In my final year, I was asked to leave the school for a lot of negative activities on the left, which was justifiable, because have you met confident ignorance before? When you know nothing but you are not aware. So I was very foolish and so then I spent 8 years trying to mop that nuisance up. At the end of 12 years, I got a 3rd class, which is a 1st class in my own reality.
Yeah.
But I got a 3rd class. But I was educated. A lot of that education I did not gain in the classroom. I gained it outside of the classroom. And I learned to be resilient, to fight, to stand, to take a position, and to solve problems. So education for me is 4. If you miss that 4, even with a PhD, you are not educated. Our societies must have the courage to think 0 to 1 by not 1 to infinity, because 1 to infinity means that somebody has to create something to permit you to build on that. 0 to 1 is the thinking that created the world from nothing. Yeah. And a lot of the inventions that we see are made from 0 to 1, which is vertical thinking. And I think we have to come there to really be able to restart this educational process and focus on what truly matters, right? And that is number 1. Education is the ability of the human spirit to experience his world. And guess what? All the nutrients that is needed to experience in the world are existential. First of all, is born fearless. When you are educated, that quality of being fearless must remain in you. In most part of Africa, it is beaten out of us in the name of correction. And a child should be bold to ask questions, to check anything. Number 2 is curiosity. A child is born fearless. A child is, we learn our fear. A child is born curious. We learn our adaptation. We learn to be contained. Every child is asking why all day. And parents' inability to answer that question condition them to shut up. And then we lose that education, right? And the child is spontaneous. And that spontaneity is required to build resilience. When children struggle in the future, what they really lack is fearlessness, curiosity, and they lack resilience. With that, even without any university degree, you will rule the whole world, as we have seen done time and again by individuals in this our same universe. So number 1, the ability to experience your world. Then to question what you are experiencing. Deep enough to find the options that exist in it. And to know which of those options to embrace as a matter of supreme urgency. I'll say that again. The education is the ability of the human spirit to experience his world, to question it deep enough to find the options that exist in it, and to know which of those options to embrace as a matter of supreme urgency. Such that even with a PhD, if you cannot do those 4 things, you are not educated. You have passed the test of academics, you have failed that of consciousness and essence. And that begins with being able to experience your world and just continue to see and taste everything. And then to question what you're experiencing. You see, the lion can shave. The reason why the lion has not shaved is because he can't ask himself, why must I have beards? If the day the lion can say, must I have beards, he will shave. And that from that moment on, his condition changes. We were naked in the jungle with the lion. We all had beards with the lion. The difference was that we could self-question. And our ability to question everything took us out of the jungle, took us into hamlets and villages and cities and towns and mega cities, right? And now to the moon and Mars. Yeah. Because we can continue to ask that question if this was enough for us and if we can change it. So the ability to experience your world, to question it deep enough to find the options. You see, the ability to birth options is the difference between all of us in this room. The difference between Bingo in our house, otherwise called our dog, or our Catty, our cat, and all the animals in the jungle, and the human being is the capacity to birth options. Right? Yes. And so we have to take the courage to consider that there's always something bigger, mightier than the experience you are having. No matter how big, massive, perplexing, or victorious that experience is. It's a choice in the human condition, the confirmation of our humanity, that we can't be stranded. There's a quality in us that can create universes parallel to whatever it is anyone or ourselves is experiencing at any point in time. That is why we can't be locked in any environment. We can find our way anywhere. We can create anything. We can meet anyone anywhere in the world. It was one day I decided that I will be a gatekeeper and I will be a way maker. And that anyone that wants to meet anybody in the world, you want to meet whoever you want to meet in the world, if you are able to pay me and afford my fees, I will put you in front of that person. Anywhere in the world. Because I have the belief that options are within the human reach. And that the blessing of the human condition itself is the ability to do that. Right? And so if we begin to question our environment, bet options all day long, we are educated. And then out of that options, to now know which one to embrace as a matter of supreme importance and urgency. An ignorant person is not confused. Confusion is not a psychological state. To be confused, you actually know what to do. Is to make a decision amongst what you know how to do that determines your condition. So confusion is the inability, unpreparedness, or refusal of the human spirit to take a decision in the face of options. So an ignorant person can never be confused. It's educated people who experience confusion because they know a lot, but they cannot make a decision based on that. You see what I'm saying? So all of these things does not need one classroom. Everything I have said now does not need one classroom. It requires, for example, softer powers like parenting. Right? Softer powers like that. And I will encourage governments to get stronger in legislating the parenting experience and in managing the parenting experience, because the highest person we hate in society came from a parent. The most stupid person in the world came from, everybody in the prisons came from the family institution. And when we learn to understand that the crisis of a nation is the crisis of the family, and then the realities in the family determines the weight of experiences in society, then we begin to win. So I don't have any form of affirmation for whatever it is that is documented in our academic experiences and in what we call organized learning, called academics, right? It should be there, but it should never be enough to define the highest experiences of the human being. And so Africa has to be bold to begin to invest in that clarity between age 0 and age 18, when the child is supposed to be ready for any level of responsibility. Call it child slavery, call it whatever you call it girl child, whatever, boy child, whatever you call it. It is simply that human beings are not able to know the experiences they deserve and to have the strength and the boldness to be able to stand for what they know that they deserve. Whether that is a 2-year-old or that is a 10-year-old. Somebody was talking to my son yesterday, and he was questioning the gentleman, and my son was running on the stage, and he was trying to take pictures. And he said to my son, behave yourself. I quickly went to him and said, he's behaving himself. There's nothing wrong with him running on the stage. You are the one that have a problem. So if you don't want my son to come here, you should have provided a creche or some playing environment for kids. A kid is designed to play. He learns by playing. So as he's doing here, he's learning. We are the one disturbing him. Yeah. Because we didn't give him an environment to go and play. And if you put him among adults, he's not going to sit down and just be looking at all of you like everything. Then he has a problem. So a kid should jump around and be free. That is where he learns his courage. So I want to challenge policymakers everywhere, educators everywhere. I know something I will share with everybody here. If an entrepreneur decides to set up an educational system in this world that is able to teach children how to connect with their fellow human beings, teach them soft powers like resilience, confidence, and boldness, only you'll be surprised that that school will be oversubscribed, because all of a sudden parents will begin to find opportunity to connect with that which they have always known but have no platform to plug into. That is the real education that Africa has to consider. Skills is not education. You can know how to plan and plan to rob a bank. What it takes to rob a bank is what it takes to build it. Exactly. So it takes a lot of skills to be a successful criminal. Project management, scenario planning. To rob a bank, you have to be there are a lot of skills you need to be able to do that. So skills have their nuisance value. And intelligence can rob a bank. Wisdom only leaves the world. And what we need to teach our children is wisdom and how to be wise. And when they learn that, they will go all the way to change their world. That's happened to Bill Gates. It's happening to Mark Zuckerberg. It's happening to Elon Musk. It's happening to all the big mouths that we know in the world. That beyond academics, there are victories that transcend particularly that line, and resident in our nature existentially is the power to be at any level.
Thank you. Thank you. Please put your hands together for PK. All right. This is the last question, and we'll be rounding up this session. That's for Dr. Samuel. We're talking about the learning environment, even though PK has touched some of that part, but I know you have perspectives to that too. So how do we improve our learning environment so that we can facilitate better education in Africa?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think with some of the experience I've gathered over the years as regards to education environment, well, one of the things I didn't do while I was coming up was I did not study education as a course, but I studied education as a life.
Okay. Whoa.
I discovered that there might be generational courses, but there are generational choices. I made those choices with myself. And when I left the university, I was looking at my colleague confused. I'm going back to your question, okay? Confused. And why will I spend 4 years in a classroom to want to learn one thing? And at the end of the day, I go for an interview, they will now say I should go for a short course in 3 months to do that one, to do another thing. So what was I doing for that 4 years? And I look at it again that my professors, I go to university, I see a professor carrying a very big briefcase with a lot of books. That is where I discovered that letter kill it. And I see a lot of big books with a lot of titles, with socks and sandal. And what they taught me all through were just principles without platform. And when I now go back to, after 10 years, go back to where I studied, I still find that lecturer there still writing books with a Reketi car, no fulfillment. His fulfillment is just tied to professorship. Title don't make men. I saw that in Dubai. When I read one of the books by Mark Twain, he said title is not leadership. And while I left, I picked up a book, Retire Rich, Retire Young. Then I saw 4 concepts. How do I need to improve? And I discovered that I have passion. I do not want to complain, because what you hate most times is what God wanted to solve. I saw it as a problem that I needed to solve. What I did was that I took a part of that book called Franchise. And I schooled in a Francophone country. I discovered that all through my years there, the way they taught us English were nothing. I went back after many years that I felt I've got some money. And I told them, how do I convert French education into English? I will bring in Nigerians to come and study here. Because I was looking for the money to fulfill that dream, to create an enabling education environment. Because I was not looking at government as my problem. I was seeing myself as a problem. And I needed to solve that problem. So what I did was that I signed the franchise. The first one I signed was 30%. I will bring Nigerian students. I am the marketer in Nigeria. I am the registrar of the university. I am the dean of the school. Are you getting what I'm
put
saying?
your hands
Then I
together when
brought
you
the
want to.
student, I bought all the necessary facilities they needed, and I started. The Frenchman, what is interested is, it will only come by December. Where's my 15%? I will give him his 15%. I was doing that for years to gather a lot of money. And when I did that, I went back to Nigeria, established a school. The first school I established was a college of health. And when the ministry came, they said, but you're not a medical doctor. I said, was Oyedepo a doctor to build a university? I said, how many professors own a university? This thing belongs to entrepreneurs. And it is born out of vision and self-recognition. Ability to know that you first, you are a person. And you came with a divine assignment to solve a certain problem. And when I discovered that, it started from there. Today, I manage 4 universities where all the professors, I pay them salary. So the first things I learned, one of the first things I learned was that I began to put, what did you do? And you are not a professor to have got to this point. And I began to teach them what I did. Correct. The first thing I did was self-recognition. Who am I? First. Because the environment, no matter how sweet the environment is, if a foolish person is there with a foolish training, the person will get a foolish result. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. True. So I don't want to see government as an issue. And the only way to also, because even the government themselves, at some point they sat down together confused. Because what they are practicalizing is politics. Even the professors are sitting down there. You ask them questions, they are confused. In my own country, Mr. is the Minister of Education. Madam Adamada, the former, who is the Minister of Education. Why a PhD holder is the one doing quality control? A professor. And at the end of the day, with a shirt and a trainer, and I will look at him and will still be telling me, boss, still calling me boss. Sir, please, can you do this? So I just feel that if we begin to recognize some certain facts, we can begin to change the narrative with our own experience. There's an experience we got in Africa. I want to sincerely tell you that every student that graduated from my school today are entrepreneurs.
Wow. I think we should put our hands
because
together for that.
In the classroom, there's a course I am teaching personally. It's called the missing course. No professor can design the curriculum. What is the missing course? They taught me all the old principle. I am not going to teach principle. I'm not going to teach Abraham Maslow theory. I will teach you Nigerian, how does the market work? The ABBA system, the Ekodumota system. There's a way they learn it. And it's born out of fearlessness, as he has said. It's born out of courage. It's born out of commitment. It's born out of discipline. It's also born out of integrity. It's also born out of responsibility. Ability to respond to your ability. I mean, responsibility is ability to respond to your abilities. Every time I need to respond to something. With that, enabling environment will be suitable by a constructive mind who is decided and by what he has gotten to put. I don't want to teach paper. I want to teach platform. I don't want to teach Abraham Maslow. I want to teach what has taken me to this point. That is the enabling environment we should be looking for. And with that, technology can now be appreciated. We bring in digitalization. We bring in digitalization. You can also introduce digitalization with a foolish theory. It is digitalization with your belief that has worked. And that will make us have a new Africa.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Samuel. I believe it's been an amazing time. Okay. It's all right. 60 seconds.
Yeah, I want to pick on what Dr. John and PK said. As much as I agree with what both of them have said, I will also disagree in some aspects because there is nothing like education. Granted, in the past, majority of the education that we got, I got only the theoretical aspect of education. I studied accounting and finance, double major, but when I went to the US, I found out that what I learned in Nigeria was really nothing compared to what I would learn while I went to school. Education has changed tremendously. You mentioned enabling environment. Enabling environment also means teaching people those soft skills. You cannot get some soft skills without going through a classroom.
True.
And that is bringing the classroom to life. It's what we call experiential learning. You cannot teach a theory without actually giving that person the tool in order for them to succeed. So when you are in a classroom, depending on who is teaching you, then you probably come out with nothing. But whoever is teaching you, if that person takes you as a human being and gives you the tools you need to succeed, there is no way you will come out of a classroom that you will not be able to step into whatever you need to step into. Schools these days, I don't know if they do it here in Nigeria, schools these days, they prepare their students for what we call internship. In 200 level, which we call sophomore year, you get these students to go do internship. My son is an engineering student who is currently doing an internship with an engineering company in the US. 300 level, which is junior year, they go for internship. That by the time they do the internship twice, the company is coming back to recruit them. My nephew just graduated from Howard University and got a job with Goldman Sachs. From Howard, direct from Howard, he's starting his job August 1st.
So we can
there is those life skills. We cannot rule out the academics when we are grooming people. We can't rule it out. Because you need that education in order for that person to be able to know what they need to strive for in life. Nobody wakes up in the morning, grow up, and be able to succeed. There are just a few of us who are talented like PK who will be able to get that. But you can't rule out the classroom. You can't teach QuickBooks.
I sense it's about to get noisy.
So you can't rule out the academic aspect. You cannot rule it out. So it's a mindset.
Okay.
Sorry. So I want to say this. If it's going to help reduce the noise that is about to...
No, I just don't want,
no. It's fine.
I don't want the educational
it's fine.
It's fine. That's just what I want to put out there.
From what I've heard, I could say that we have education for life, right? For success in life, and then we have education for certain skills.
Excuse me. So let me say this. You can feel the room.
Yeah.
You know that this is a very important conversation.
Yes, I know.
Exactly.
So don't. That's why we are here. Don't sweep it under the carpet. Let us listen to what he has to say.
Okay.
You know, let's hear what he has to say.
Thank you for serving this moment. You see, for me, I think I want to say something completely different. In Nigeria, we drove a project we called value-based education. And we sat down, I remember sitting down with a couple of ministry people at a point, because, you see, we have a lot of educated professors that are completely, morally, value bankrupt.
Yep. True, very true.
You see, when we talk about education that would eventually help Africa, I think we need to go 360 degrees backward. Because let's forget all these theories and English we speak. In my country, we have a professor who is leading a major parastatal in my country. He was whistled out by the Economic and Financial Crime Commission by stealing pension that is meant for people who cannot even help themselves, totaling in billions of naira by one person. If you go to his CV, he's a professor, possibly from about 7-10 universities across the world. Highly, very well educated, but morally bankrupt. So we need to go back and begin to talk about this education we are discussing. There is value. I know there is skills. You know, for me, we talked about three major, aspects of education. We have education of the head. We have education of the heart. Then we have education of the hand. You see, what we've been doing in Africa or even across different places is educating the head. Intelligence. That's what we do. Then when you talk about the heart, you talk about values. How does a child who is just barely how many years understand how he can commit suicide, kill other people, and he doesn't care? No value for life. So when we talk about education, we need to begin to look at the content of our behavior. What kind of parent are you? What does your children see you do first at home? You quarrel their mother, you beat them in their front, and tomorrow you want that child to grow up and become the savior of Africa and become the president of Ghana. It can never work. So we need to understand what we design and call value-based education. Then after the education of the heart, you now have what we call skill acquisition, which is education of the hand. If we can imbibe these values, don't take away value from education. Today, in some places, they tell you, Bible is not in church. You can't pray in some schools. You can't pray in some schools. There are certain things they tell you now you cannot do in some schools, simply because they are trying to manage the system while destroying the same system. So for me, you know, PK them are very on the other side. and we give that to them. But essentially, we must understand that there is need for us as policymakers. We are fighting to make sure that this becomes a curriculum in our schools, where you come back, you teach a child what it means to respect his elder. They don't know. Physics, mathematics can't tell you that.
Sure.
Cannot teach you that.
Sorry, sir. So that is not supposed to even be in the classroom in the first place. That's supposed to come from parenting. And let's be clear. What we are saying here are, see, we are all in the same tandem. We are all on the same parallel. But I don't want us to leave here to emphasize what we are not saying.
Sure.
Right? Now, the truth is, if you can't, and this thing is common sense, just common sense. If you can't experience your world, you can't question what you are experiencing, you can't create options from what you are questioning, and you can't take decisions based on your options, you are not educated. I don't care what degree you have. Education, somebody learns about physics. Without learning physics, give you a plane. You learn physics to pass exam, and you say you are educated. The Wright brothers did not have a PhD in physics. Who gave us the first plane? The first person that certified people, who certified him? Where did he learn it from? The first person that said this is certification for life coaching. Where did he get the certification from? Which classroom did he go? And until we have the rebellion to be able to go back to zero and say, how does this learning start? We will continue to be well-trained slaves. And when we go to school and we acquire all the education, we are still slaves, but our chains are losing a bit. And then we come into society.
Longer chains.
To help the production of slavery to continue. Right?
Yeah.
And what we are saying is, I don't care if people work in Google or they work in, what does that do? The guys who set up Microsoft, how does their physics education help them to build that? And what we are saying is, don't ignore academics. He has his role. And I will tell you freely, guys, the exact role of academics. Academics is one, to eliminate quack and to build standardization. So 2 people can put a knife in your tummy, 2 people. One can wake you up next week, the other one cannot wake you up again. When you need somebody to put a knife in your tummy, how do you know they want to go and see? Academics allow us to know. Doctor, a surgeon, and a killer. 2 guys can debate a lot. They are good debaters. One can save you in court. The other one cannot save you. When you need somebody to set you free in court, how do you know they want to go and see? Academics allows us to know a lawyer and a debater. To think that is the limit of the human experience is what we are questioning. We are now saying that is amazing, that is awesome, but it doesn't define the limit of the human experience. And if all you are going to master is what the classroom can offer, you will be around. You will not be present enough to change anything. And all of that is across the world. Professors, people are going to school, bagging degree upon degree. Look at Nigerians and Africans in America. I live there. Nigerians don't live in America, just in case you don't know. They live in Nigeria inside America. Africans don't live in America. They live in Africa inside America. When you go close to them, what are they doing? They are working so hard to join the consuming space. What is the consuming space? Get all the degree so that you can earn all the money to buy. What is the white man learning? Get degree if you can, but most importantly, learn the ability to make. Making is the hope of the future, not buying. And when you can work so hard, put money in the bank, build houses, have real estate, come back to Africa to oppress smaller souls. who see your success, the money you have, and your bank accounts and your house as the emblem of superiority. I go to churches, I'm a pastor. I sit in churches, people come to church to share testimony about having a car. You know, a car that is supposed to be a tool of effectiveness, a tool of efficiency and speed. You come to church because the people who are observing you see that car as an emblem of superiority. And so when they see you and you are testifying, you too, you are not celebrating the arrival of a machine to give you pace. You are celebrating an escape. In other words, you have joined two dead bodies all trying to enter a coffin. So the idea is a new step of liberty is required. And that liberty does not come from accepting the status quo. We must have the courage to ask ourselves if these ideas we are learning are really setting us free. Do you know that every office in Africa, every government office is filled with educated people? With people with PhDs, with BScs, with MBAs. Look at the word, Master of Business Administration. It should be the richest. Master is the master of business administration. And is taking a job under somebody who has never gone to any school. So listen, we must embrace education. We must embrace academics. But let us have the courage to make a distinction between academics and education. And where I sit as a futurist, I know there is academics, there's education, there's revelation, which is superior to both. And you have to be at another state of consciousness to assess that. And human beings like you and I are assessing that and creating something for the educated and the academically qualified to work with. That is a dimension we have to begin to reason from. So I still say it, there's something called creative rebellion. The ability of the human spirit to accept what has been created, to celebrate status quo, but to know that possibilities are superior to both, and to have the courage to step out of known knowledge into newness. And that newness comes from taking a stand against all that you have ever known. You will never find your freedom at the highest level if you don't have to reject your history. If you can't reject your history and build newness on that, if you cannot create wisdom from known knowledge, you will be around, like I've said, you'll be one of the many. To stand tall in your newness and in your power, you will need something bigger than your known self and your known knowledge. And that is not in the classroom. That's in the freedom of the mind, the wealth of the soul, the creativity of the human spirit. That has nothing to do with any precedent. It has to do with the unprecedented. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we are all saying the same thing. It's just that we are defining it at different levels.
Yeah, exactly. As long as we agree,
we are all saying the same
it's what
thing.
we do with it that matters at the end of the day. So
that's it.
There is education, there is academic. It's what you do with it that matters.
We're at peace now, right? From everything that has been said, we could see that probably you established that there is a clear dichotomy between education and all right. Exactly. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful session. I want you to seriously appreciate our panelists with a standing ovation. Thank you very much. Thank you.